My friend, stop scrolling. This is not just another sermon clip. This is a word from heaven for someone who's tired, someone feeling stuck in yesterday's pain, someone being chased by the shadows of the past. This isn't a coincidence, it's divine timing. God orchestrated this moment, this screen, this voice, because your breakthrough starts now. What's been following you ends today. If you walk away now, you might miss your Red Sea moment. In the book of Exodus, they stepped into the sea as slaves, but they came out as sons and daughters of the Most High. And I'm telling you, the same God who parted those waters is still parting waters for you. This isn't just about making it through, it's about becoming who you really are. You are not the name your chains tried to give you. You are who the cross says. You are redeemed, chosen, royal. In this message, I'll show you how God uses the very struggle that tried to break you to transform you. And what's chasing you, it can't outrun the God who goes before you. What hunted you is about to drown in the sea of your deliverance. Before we go deeper, I want to invite you to do 3 things. First, tap that like button. Second, subscribe. Let's build this family of unshakable faith. Third, drop 777 in the comments. That's not just a number. It's heaven's signature, completion, perfection, divine alignment. If you know this is your moment, type it now. Stand in agreement with heaven. Stay with me until the end, because your spirit already knows this word is for you. Let's begin. Beloved chosen ones, you prayed for it. You cried for it. You begged God for a way out. And now that you're in the middle of your miracle in progress, it doesn't feel anything like the freedom you imagined. See, we just talked about how sometimes God doesn't answer in the way you expected. He doesn't send the cavalry, he sends confusion. He doesn't bring the sun, he leads you by a pillar of fire. He doesn't open the door. Instead, he takes you into the wilderness. And that's where we find the Israelites out there, in the heat, tired, hungry, and unsure. And what do? They turn on Moses and Aaron, the very ones who prayed with them, the very ones who risked everything to obey God's voice, the very ones who said yes when it would have been easier to walk away. They start saying things like, "Why did you bring us out here to die? At least in Egypt we had meat. Wait what you asked to be free. You cried out under oppression. You begged for a change. But now you want to go back to bondage because your stomach's growling." Now, I'm not just talking to the Israelites right now, I'm talking to the Moseses in the room. I'm talking to the leaders. I'm talking to the parents, the pastors, the mentors, the friends, those of you who said yes to leading people out of something destructive only to be blamed when the road gets hard. Have you ever been there? You gave your all. You followed the calling. You didn't even want the spotlight, you just wanted to obey God. But somehow, when things got uncomfortable, you became the target, you became the villain in someone else's confusion. Let me tell you something that might lift that weight off your shoulders. You are not alone. God sees it. God saw the Israelites murmur. God heard them speak against Moses. But God never blamed Moses, because heaven recognizes when you're being faithful, even when you're misunderstood. And this is the truth. Most people never tell you leadership will cost you your comfort, but sometimes it will cost you your reputation. Sometimes people will love you until the miracle slows down. They will praise you until provision gets delayed. And in the silence between Egypt and the Promised Land, you'll become their complaint box. But here's the deeper truth. God still honors you in the middle. You might be questioned. You might be gossiped about. You might be falsely accused. But if you're walking in obedience, if you're standing in the fire God called you into, you are covered. See, Moses didn't defend himself. He didn't argue with the people. He didn't waste his energy trying to be understood. He went to God, and that's your assignment too. When you are misunderstood in the middle, don't defend, discern. Don't retaliate or retreat into God's presence, because it is in those moments of injustice that God proves he's still with you. So if you're leading and you feel rejected, if you're guiding someone and all they do is complain, if you're standing in the gap for your family, your ministry, your team, and they can't even see it, I came to tell you, hold on. You're in good company. So was Moses. So was Joseph. So was Jesus. You're not cursed. You're called, and God will vindicate your name in His time, in His way, for His glory. My dear friends, now let me ask you something. Have you ever gone through a season where you knew you were no longer in Egypt, but you hadn't quite made it to the promised land either? You're walking, you're following, you're trusting, but it feels like you're in the in-between. You left behind the bondage, but you haven't yet stepped into the breakthrough. That's the wilderness. And listen to me now. That wilderness, that dry land, that place where nothing grows and everything feels uncertain, God says, even there I've made provision for you. See, in the last moment, we talked about the sting of being misunderstood. How Moses stood before a people who once cried for deliverance and now turned on the very hands God used to lead them. But here's the beauty of God. Even when the people doubted, even when they grumbled, even when they misunderstood, God still provided. Now hear me on this, because this next part, this is where it gets personal. The word says God gave the Israelites a cloud by day and fire by night. That's more than just navigation. That's more than just GPS from heaven. That was comfort. That was protection. That was intention. That was God saying, I'm not just giving you what you need, I'm giving it to you in a way that considers your pain, your fatigue, your fear, your temperature, your humanity. That's a God who adjusts the environment for you. That cloud during the day, it shaded them from the scorching desert sun. That fire at night, it kept them warm in the cold darkness of the wilderness. God didn't just say, figure it out. No. He stepped into the desert with them and adjusted the thermostat. Now let me ask you something. How many times has God been adjusting your atmosphere and you didn't even realize it? You were so busy worrying about the food, the water, the destination, you didn't even notice the cloud. You didn't see how He kept that door closed because it was going to burn you. You didn't realize He made them walk away because they were never assigned to your destiny. You missed the fire that was keeping your heart warm in the loneliness. You missed the shade He gave you while you were walking through depression. That's what happens when we're in the wilderness. We get so focused on the lack that we miss the love. We see what's not here yet, and we forget what God's already been doing behind the scenes. See, the Israelites thought provision was just about food and water. They said, did you bring us out here to die of thirst? But they didn't realize they hadn't died. They hadn't burned. They hadn't frozen. Their clothes hadn't worn out. Their shoes hadn't disintegrated. And every morning there was fresh manna. Let me tell you what that means. God cares about your comfort. Yes, He wants to shape your character, stretch your faith, mature your spirit, but He also knows you're human. He made you. He knit you together. He knows your frame. So when you're in the desert, He doesn't just throw you a miracle. He tailors the miracle to the climate you're in. That's a father. And here's the challenge. If you don't open your eyes to see the comfort He's already provided, you'll start complaining about a God who's actually been carrying you. You'll start blaming the heat when He's already sent a cloud. You'll start resenting the darkness when His fire's been burning just to keep you safe. Some of us are praying for deliverance, but what we really need is discernment. Discernment to see that we're already being fed. Discernment to recognize that the wilderness is not abandonment, it's adjustment. It's not punishment, it's preparation. And God is feeding you, right? Where you are, you might not have filet mignon, but you've got manna. You might not see the palace, but you've got the pillar. God said, I will be with you. That's the promise. He never promised a problem-free path, but He did promise presence. He did promise provision. And listen, sometimes the biggest miracle is not what God gives, it's how He gives it. Now let's bring this home. The people were in a harsh place, but God softened the conditions And he'll do the same for you. He'll make the meeting run short so you can rest. He'll hold off the storm until your child gets home safe. He'll keep your car running when the gas tank should have given out. He'll bring a stranger to say the exact word you needed to hear at the exact moment your faith was breaking. That's the cloud by day. That's the fire by night. And if you don't pay attention, you'll miss it. You'll complain while being carried. You'll cry out in lack while God is feeding your soul. So today I want you to shift your posture. Don't just look for the promised land, look for the presence in the process. Ask God to open your eyes. Ask him to show you the cloud, show you the fire, show you where he's already feeding you emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. Ask him to make you aware of the shade and the warmth, the subtle miracles, because when you realize that the Almighty God is not just getting you through the desert, but customizing the experience to comfort you in it, you'll stop feeling forsaken. You'll stop living in scarcity. You'll realize you've been loved the whole way. God is not just the God of the destination. He's the God of the desert. And the next time you start to say, Lord, where are you? Pause, breathe, look around. You just might find you're standing in the shadow of his cloud. You just might feel the warmth of his fire. You just might realize he's been feeding you all along. Beloved chosen ones, do you know one of the hardest places to be in is in between? Not where you were and not yet where you're going. You're no longer in Egypt, but you're not in the promised land either. You're just in the desert. And it's dry, and it's quiet, and it's confusing, and you look around and everything feels unfamiliar, and worst of all, God ain't telling you the whole plan. See, in the part we just came from, we talked about how God fed them in the wilderness. He gave them cloud by day, fire by night. He cared about their comfort. He adjusted the thermostat in the desert because that's how detailed your God is. But even when he does all that, the desert is still dry and the journey is still unknown. Now lean in, because I want to talk to the people who are struggling with not knowing. We were built to crave detail. We were wired to want a map. Give me the blueprint. Give me the schedule. Give me the exit plan. Tell me how long this is going to take. Let me budget the pain, predict the turns, pre-approve the people, calculate the risks. But hear me, today God does not lead with detail. He leads with faith, and that is traumatic. Let me say it plainly. Uncertainty is a form of spiritual trauma. Some of you think trauma only comes from tragedy. No, trauma can come from transition. Trauma can come from not knowing, from waking up every day not sure what's next, from walking on a word you heard last year but haven't seen fulfilled yet, from stepping into a calling with no clarity, obeying God while the plan still feels invisible, and you're exhausted, not because God failed you, but because he hasn't filled in the blanks. And you're scared, not because you don't trust him, but because the silence is louder than your faith. And you're tempted to turn back, to sit down, to doubt, because trauma doesn't just happen in the fight. Trauma happens in the waiting, and let's be honest, many of us are not stuck in sin, we're stuck in stall. Not because we're rebellious, but because we're scared to move without seeing. But God says you won't see it until you step. The clarity comes on the move. The miracle comes in motion. Listen to me. You will never walk into your next if you keep waiting for the entire blueprint. God doesn't give blueprints, he gives instructions. He says, go, and expects you to move. He says, stretch out your rod, and expects you to trust the sea will part. He says, step into the water, and waits for your foot before he moves the river. That's not cruelty. That's training. That's how God builds soldiers, not slaves. That's how he forms faith, not formulas. Some of you are praying, Lord, I need confirmation. But what if the confirmation is your obedience? What if you don't need a second sign, you need a first step? See, the trauma of uncertainty is real. It messes with your emotions. It drains your energy. It triggers your anxiety. But what if the trauma isn't the enemy? What if it's the tool? Because when you can't rely on information, you learn how to rely on intimacy. You stop leaning on Google and start leaning on God. You stop planning and start praying. You stop controlling and start depending. Let me talk to the leaders in the room, to the parents, to the visionaries, to the risk takers. Hear me. If you're waiting on peace before you proceed, you'll miss your miracle. God doesn't give peace before obedience. He gives peace through obedience. And I know it's terrifying, walking forward when you can't see what's ahead. But maybe, just maybe, that's where trust is born. Not in the knowing, but in the not knowing. See, Pharaoh chased them, and the Red Sea stood in front of them. But God didn't open the sea from a distance. He waited until they stepped, until they got close. And I believe there are some Red Seas in your life, things that won't open until you walk toward them in faith. I'm telling you, child of God, don't let the trauma of uncertainty freeze you. Don't let the pain of not knowing paralyze you. The silence of God is not the absence of God. It's the strategy of God. Because if He told you everything, you try to do it without Him. And sometimes God will withhold the plan so He can hold your hand. Today, I want to speak life to the part of you that's scared to move. I want to remind you, you don't have to know it all to take a step. All you need is a word. And if you've got that word, if He said go, if He whispered trust me, if He breathed move, then start walking. The trauma is real, but so is your healing. The fear is real, but so is your faith. And God didn't bring you this far to leave you blind. He's building you for something you can't see yet. And when the dust settles and the pieces come together and the fog clears, you'll look back and realize the trauma was transportation. God was getting you ready for what you couldn't handle if He gave it too soon. So walk, child of God. Even if it's shaking, even if it's slow, even if it's silent, walk, because you're not walking alone. My dear friends, you ever wonder why sometimes your anger explodes in the wrong direction? Why you lash out at your spouse over something small? Why your coworker gets the cold shoulder just because they asked a question maybe it's not about them? Maybe it never was. See, when the children of Israel came out of Egypt and into the wilderness, they faced uncertainty, dryness, hunger, and fear. And instead of directing their frustration toward the real root, the trauma of bondage, the exhaustion of not knowing, they pointed it all at Moses. The one leading them forward became the one they blamed for their past. That, my friend, is what we call misplaced rage. Misplaced rage is when your fury wears a false label, when the heat inside your heart doesn't match the target of your words. It's like throwing punches at shadows while the real enemy hides in the dark. The Israelites weren't mad at Moses. No, they were mad that their lives were uprooted. They were mad at God's silence, at the insecurity of change, at the weight of a journey they didn't sign up for. But they didn't say that. Instead, they turned on the one right in front of them. Sound familiar? You don't scream at the real pain, you scream at what's available. Some of us are walking around with a fuse that's already lit. Not because today was hard, but because 10 years ago someone abandoned us. Because as a child we weren't protected. Because in moments we needed clarity, all we got was confusion. And now anything that even smells like disappointment sends us into reaction mode. That's not healing, that's unhealed. Hurt running wild. That's spiritual inflammation. That's the soul trying to process what the mind never understood. And if you don't pause and reflect, if you don't trace back the emotion to its original wound, you'll burn down the relationships God actually sent to help you. Let me tell you what this rage really is. It's grief with armor on. It's sadness that never got permission to cry, so it learned to shout. It's confusion that never got comfort, so it turned into control. It's fear that pretended to be strength so nobody would see the trembling. And the thing is, we've gotten good at wearing it. We've made it normal. We say things like, "That's just how I am." No, that's how trauma trained you to be. That's what you became in order to survive. But God didn't call you to stay in survival mode. He called you to heal, to grow, to love again, to trust again. But you can't do that if your rage keeps blocking the entrance. This kind of rage is dangerous because it feels righteous. It makes you feel powerful, but it's just a decoy. It makes you feel like you're standing up for yourself, but really you're standing in the way of your own breakthrough. When God brings people into your life to love you, lead you, or stretch you, and all you can do is react to them like they're the villain, you miss the point. Moses was not the enemy. Your spouse is not the enemy. That boss who gives you structure is not the enemy. But if you're still carrying wounds from someone who misused authority in your past, anyone with authority will trigger the rage you've been saving. And that rage don't ask questions, it just attacks. I'm not saying your pain isn't real. Oh, it's real. I know it is. But I'm asking, what if your reaction is directed at the wrong thing? What if God is trying to do something new in you, but every time he introduces change, you sabotage it with a storm from your past? What if the voice that yells they don't respect you is actually echoing a time you felt invisible as a child? What if the fear that says don't trust them is just the residue of betrayal? See, unless we confront the root, the fruit will keep showing up in our relationships, our choices, or leadership, our families. There's a reason God allowed this to be recorded in Scripture, because he knew we would do the same thing. He knew we would project old wounds onto new people. He knew we would demand apologies from people who didn't even offend us. And so he gave us this example, not to judge the Israelites, but to examine ourselves. Where in your life have you directed your frustration toward the visible while ignoring the invisible pain beneath it? Where have you blamed others for burdens that don't belong to them? Maybe the real work today isn't about managing anger. It's about locating grief. Maybe what needs healing is not the symptom, but the scar. Maybe God is calling you not to explode, but to explore, not to destroy, but to discover. Because buried inside that misplaced rage is a story, and that story deserves your attention. Not because it makes you weak, but because acknowledging it might be the very thing that finally sets you free. You want to know what real strength looks like. It looks like pulling back the curtain on your own heart and saying, why am I really mad? It looks like recognizing that yelling at your kids isn't about them not doing chores, it's about you not feeling seen at work. It's realizing that the cold silence you give your partner isn't about what they forgot, it's about the fear of being left behind. And that kind of honesty, that takes courage, that invites healing, that makes room for the Holy Spirit to come in and do surgery, not just soothe the symptoms. Don't let misplaced rage define you. Don't let it keep hijacking your joy. Don't let it convince you that everyone is against you when God is trying to fight for you. Bring it to him. Lay it down. And when he shows you the real source, don't run, listen. That's how transformation begins. That's how brokenness becomes breakthrough. So if you find yourself like the Israelites shouting at Moses when your real battle is internal, don't shame yourself. Just pause. Just reflect. Ask the Holy Spirit to show you what you're truly carrying. Because until you do, you'll keep fighting shadows. But the moment you face the truth, God will give you strength not just to react, but to rise. Beloved chosen ones, when you've been walking through uncertainty long enough, when you've been navigating life without a map, driven by faith and not by sight, there comes a moment when your mind, your own thoughts start turning against you. The people of Israel had just survived a trauma of uncertainty, and now they were wrestling with another battlefield, their own thinking. And family, I need to talk to you tonight about something that's not outside of you. Not the devil, not your haters, but something inside you I want to talk to you about how your thoughts can betray you. Now, this may not sound like a threat to you. We often think of betrayal as something someone else does to us, someone we trusted, someone we let into our lives. But sometimes the greatest betrayal comes from the thoughts we trust most. The thoughts we've leaned on for years, the plans we've made in our heads, the visions we had of how God was supposed to show up. But Isaiah 55 says clearly, "Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake their ways and the unrighteous their thoughts. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, and neither are your ways. My ways declares the Lord." And that verse right there exposes something deep, something sacred, something that's going to require us to surrender more than our sins. It requires us to surrender our thinking. You can clean up your behavior but still be held hostage by your belief. You can stop doing wrong yet still cling to wrong thoughts. And the tragedy is when your thinking is off, you will reject the very thing you prayed for because it doesn't look the way you expected. Somebody here knows what I'm talking about. You prayed for peace and God sent a storm to teach you how to find peace in it. You prayed for strength and God allowed pressure so your roots would go deeper. You asked him for purpose and he let you feel pain, because purpose is always birthed in discomfort. But if your mind is stuck on how you think God should answer, you'll miss the miracle that's already standing in front of you. That's the betrayal I'm talking about. Your thoughts will tell you, God should have already worked this out. Your thoughts will whisper, if it was really God, it wouldn't be this hard. Your thoughts will suggest you're going in circles. You're stuck. You're wasting time, and if you're not careful, you'll let those thoughts lead you to abandon what God is actually using to grow you. You'll walk away from the lesson because it didn't fit the logic. But God never asked you to understand him. He asked you to trust him. And there's a difference. You don't need faith for what you understand. You need faith for what confuses you. And the Lord says, my ways are higher. My thoughts are higher. So the question is not, do you believe in God? The question is, do you trust him enough to let go of your own ideas of how he should move? And I know it's hard because we live in a world that trains us to trust what we can predict. We love our plans. We love our schedules. We love our 10-year vision boards. But what do you do when God interrupts the blueprint you made in your head? Can you still call him faithful when the plan you thought was from him falls apart? Can you still say he's good when the path twists and turns and you don't? Recognize the terrain. You've got to make peace with mystery. That's part of following God. You've got to make peace with a God who can bless you in ways you didn't ask for and break you in ways you didn't expect, and call both of them love. You've got to trust that when your thoughts fall short, his plan still stands. And maybe the reason you're frustrated right now is because you're trying to force divine purpose into human reasoning. You're trying to cram God into a box he never agreed to. You're mad because your story doesn't match the script you wrote. But baby, he's the author. He writes the story. And he doesn't need your permission to write in a plot twist. Sometimes he blesses you by saying yes. Sometimes he saves you by saying no. But in all things, he's still writing something good. So don't let your thoughts trap you in disappointment. Don't let your logic limit your obedience. The answer might already be present, but you'll never receive it if you're rejecting it based on what you thought it should look like. You thought the Savior would come with a sword. God sent a baby in a manger. You thought deliverance would come overnight. God took Israel through a wilderness. You thought the healing would look like escape. God brought resurrection through crucifixion. If you're not careful, you'll dismiss the divine because it doesn't look dramatic. You'll ignore the miraculous because it feels mundane. But God is not obligated to fit into your framework. He's not confined to your expectations. He is who he is, and you have to let him be who he is, not who you imagined him to be. And some of you are holding on so tightly to what you thought God was going to do, you're missing what he's actually doing. You've got this mental image, this perfect picture of how it should all come together. And because it doesn't match, you're frustrated, bitter, even questioning if God is still for you. But I came to tell you sometimes the greatest faith is not in receiving what you hoped for, it's in recognizing God in what you didn't ask for. You've got to release the picture in your head so you can receive the promise in your hand. You've got to let go of the script you wrote so you can embrace the chapter He's actually writing. The thoughts that once protected you can now imprison you if you don't update them in the presence of God. Let Him renew your mind. Let Him stretch your faith. Let Him rewrite your expectations. Because if you don't, you might walk away from your answer. You might curse your blessing. You might fight against the very hand of God because it doesn't feel familiar. You'll be like the Israelites complaining about manna because it's not the food they imagined. But manna is still provision. The cloud may not feel like GPS, but it's still direction. His ways are not your ways. His thoughts are not your thoughts, but His heart. Oh, His heart is always for you. So tonight I challenge you. Surrender your thoughts. Submit your understanding. Don't let your mind betray your miracle. Say, Lord, I lay down how I think you should work, and I pick up the faith to trust that you're working even now. Even here, even when I don't get it. Because sometimes the most dangerous place to be is not in the middle of the storm. It's in the grip of your own assumptions. Free yourself. Let the Word renew your mind. And when the thoughts rise up to question God's plan, respond with worship. Respond with trust. Respond with surrender. And say your ways are higher. Your thoughts are greater. And I trust you completely. And now we come to one of the most profound, most unsettling, and yet most liberating statements that God ever spoke to a human being. A frase so simple, yet so disruptive, so full of mystery, yet charged with divine promise. After everything Abraham had given up, after leaving his country, his people, his father's house, all on the strength of a voice that called from heaven, he still hadn't been given a map. No detailed itinerary, no GPS coordinates, just a whisper from the Almighty saying, go to the land I will show you, not I have shown you. Not, let me explain the plan first, but I will show you. See, that's where most of us get stuck. That's where faith becomes more than just a church word. Because we're taught to ask questions, we're conditioned to seek clarity, we crave control. We want to know what the next step is before we take the first one. But God doesn't operate on our terms. He doesn't hand out full blueprints in advance. He gives us a word, a direction, a nudge in our spirit, and then He waits to see if we trust Him enough to walk. This is the kind of obedience that's blind to sight, but not to vision. It's faith that walks into fog, trusting that the sunlight will break somewhere along the journey. And some of y'all are waiting for God to light up the whole path, but He's only promised to be a lamp to your feet, not a floodlight into next year. He said, I will show you not, I will show you now. That means you got to move before you understand. That means you have to obey without confirmation. That means your miracle is not waiting for your logic, it's waiting for your movement. God doesn't reveal everything to get your permission. He's looking for faith that says yes while it's still dark. Faith that says, Lord, I don't know where I'm going, but I trust who's sending me. And let me tell you something, when God says, I will show you, it's not just a delay of information, it's an invitation to intimacy. He wants to walk with you. He wants to reveal His heart, little by little as you journey with Him. It's not that He's trying to be vague, He's trying to be close. Because revelation comes in relationship. Some of y'all are asking God to speak more clearly, and He's asking you to walk more closely. Abraham had to make peace with not knowing. He had to let go of what made sense. And some of you are frustrated right now because you've mistaken delay for denial. But the promise hasn't been denied, it's just being delivered in pieces. God is showing you in stages. Because if he showed you everything all at once, it would either scare you or make you proud. So he says, I will show you, not because he's hiding it from you, but because he's preparing it for you and you for it. Can I tell you what makes this so powerful? When God says, I will show you, he is anchoring your future, not in a place, but in a person. He's saying, don't follow a plan, follow me. And some of you are stuck because you keep trying to make your plans work, but God is calling you into purpose, and purpose doesn't come with a flow chart. It comes with footsteps, and every time you obey, another piece of the picture comes into focus. This is the highest level of faith, when you can worship without answers, when you can praise while you're still packing, when you can believe even when you're broke, still moving, when you're misunderstood, still trusting, when the whole world is telling you to turn back. That's what God is looking for. Not perfection, not performance, but faith that walks. Let me bring it closer. Some of you are angry with God because he hasn't given you what you asked for. You think he's ignoring you? But what if his silence is the setup? What if he's waiting for you to leave where you are before he shows you what's next? Because sometimes he can't show you until you let go. Sometimes you've got to leave the familiar before you can step into the fruitful. You don't get the map first. You get the command. And if you're waiting for God to give you the full download before you obey, you're going to miss the miracle. Because obedience unlocks the revelation. You won't know it until you walk in it. I will show you means the journey is the classroom, the motion is the miracle, and the mystery that's part of the blessing. Because when you look back one day and you realize how far you've come without ever knowing the full picture, that's when your faith becomes your testimony. That's when the story makes sense. Not before, not during, but after. And by then you'll say, only God could have written this. Listen to me, friend. You're not lost. You're just in process. You're not behind, you're in the middle of revelation. And it might look like confusion now, but clarity is coming. You may feel like you're walking in circles, but every step is shaping you, training you, preparing you for the land that he will show you. And don't compare your journey to anyone else's. Their revelation ain't your revelation. Their timeline ain't your timeline. What God is showing them may be different from what he's going to show you. So don't look sideways, look up. Keep your eyes on the author, not the algorithm. Keep your heart in motion even when your head is full of questions. Because he said, I will show you, and he's not a man that he should lie. Let me leave you with this. When God told Abraham to go, he didn't even give him the name of the place. He didn't say, go to Canaan. He just said, go. Because God doesn't just want to take you to a place. He wants to take you through a process. And the blessing isn't just in arriving, it's in the becoming. Every step you take in faith shapes you. It grows you. It transforms you into the person who can handle the promise. So stop waiting for perfect clarity. Stop stalling until everything makes sense. Take the step. Move in obedience. Because your breakthrough is often hidden behind a step you haven't taken yet. God is saying, I will show you, not I might not. I'll think about it. He will, but you have to move first. You have to trust him more than your senses. You have to believe that even when the way isn't visible, the one leading you is faithful. He's not asking you to understand. He's asking you to believe. And the moment you move in obedience, the heavens respond. The next chapter opens, the light begins to shine, but you got to move first. That's the faith walk. That's the call. That's the invitation. I will show you, and he will. My dear friends, when God says, I will show you, he's not giving you a brochure. He's not handing you a fully loaded GPS with turn-by-turn instructions. And he's certainly not interested in satisfying your craving for control. Because faith, real faith, is never a journey of understanding. It's not a journey of intellect. It is a journey of obedience. And that brings us right here to this moment where God whispers something sacred to your soul. What I'm about to do your father's never seen, your grandfather never touched. No one in your bloodline has walked this path, but I will show you. Let that settle for a moment. Because what God is saying is not just personal, it's prophetic. It's disruptive. It shatters generational ceilings and shakes loose everything familiar and safe. God is speaking to someone right now, someone who is walking in the dark, someone who has been wondering, Lord, where is this leading? And God is saying, this path I've carved out, it's never been walked before in your family. But I chose you to walk it. This is not a journey of pattern, it's a journey of promise. You can't compare this to what you've seen. You can't rely on what was modeled. You can't reproduce your parents' faith, because what God is doing with you is something altogether new. And that's why it feels confusing. That's why it feels lonely. That's why it feels like darkness. Because God is calling you through a door that has no handle, only hinges of trust. You keep asking God for confirmation, but God's asking you for movement. You keep wanting clarity, but God's waiting for courage. You keep saying, Lord, just show me a sign. And God's replying, I already did. You're still here. You didn't get here because you understood every step. You got here because something in your spirit wouldn't quit even when your mind had questions. That's what makes this journey sacred. You are not walking in the light of explanation. You are walking in the light of revelation. And revelation doesn't come before the first step. It comes along the way. That's what he meant when he said, I will show you, not I will explain everything to you before you leave. Not I'll map it out so you feel comfortable, but simply I will show you, which means you'll see it not before, but while you walk. It's easy to walk when you know where you're going. It's easy to believe when you've got proof. But what do you do when all you have is a word? What do you do when you're walking a path you've never seen with a direction that's not even visible? That's the faith God is calling you to. And it is not for the faint of heart. Listen to me. This isn't the kind of faith you read in a textbook. This isn't the kind of faith you rehearse in a Bible study group and then file away neatly. This is the kind of faith that gets messy. The kind that cries in the middle of the night. The kind that says, God, if you don't come through, I won't make it. You want to talk about legacy? God is birthing something in you that will become the legacy, not because you repeated what others did, but because you obeyed when no one else would. Because you trusted him when everything in your head said, turn back. You kept moving when your emotions screamed, this is insane. You kept walking when your past tried to pull you back. That is what sets you apart. That is what heaven calls faith. And here's what's so important to remember. The fact that you've never seen it done doesn't mean it can't be done. The fact that no one in your family has walked this way doesn't mean God isn't walking with you. You are pioneering a path that generations before you didn't have the faith to follow. You are saying yes to what others rejected. You are becoming what others only dreamed of. That's why the discomfort is so real. You're not just breaking personal habits, you're breaking generational ones. You're not just making different decisions, you're shifting the atmosphere of your entire bloodline. That's why the enemy is fighting you so hard. Because if you walk this thing out, your children will never have to face the battles you've had to fight. They'll walk into rooms you had to kick doors open to enter. They'll inherit blessings you had to fast and pray for. All because you dared to walk blindly, holding nothing but the word. I will show you. You can't explain this to everyone. You're not supposed to. Because some people will look at your life and say, why would you leave what you had? They won't understand that what you had was not your destiny. They won't understand that comfort is not confirmation. They won't understand that God didn't call you to copy, he called you to carry. So you've got to stop apologizing for what you don't know and start walking in what you do know. You may not know the next step, but you know the one who's leading you. You may not know the destination, but you know his voice. And his voice is enough This is not the season to lean on logic. This is the season to lean into trust. This is the season where God is saying, what I'm doing in you, your father didn't have language for. Your mother didn't have vision for. Your church may not have had the structure for, but I'm doing it in you and I will show you. So stop looking around for someone to validate the vision. They didn't get it because it wasn't for them. It was for you. God didn't tell them, He told you. And your responsibility is not to make them understand. Your responsibility is to walk. You are on a journey that eyes have not seen, ears have not heard, and it hasn't entered into the hearts of man, because God has prepared it for those who love Him. That's what Scripture says. And if you love Him, you'll trust Him even in the dark. This is what it means to have faith beyond intellect. It's not that you shut your mind off, it's that you elevate your spirit higher than your questions. It's not that you have all the facts, it's that you hold fast to the truth. And the truth is this: God said, I will show you. So walk, cry if you have to, but walk. Question: if you must but walk, crawl if you're weak, but keep moving. Because every step you take is proof that you trust the voice of the one who called you. And if He said He would show you, then He will. Not on your schedule, not in your style, but in His time, in His way, in His glory. And when He does, you'll look back and realize it was worth it all. Every uncertain step, every tear, every sacrifice, because what you were walking toward wasn't just for you. It was for every soul coming after you who needed to know it's possible. You are the proof that walking in the dark still leads to light. You are the testimony that obedience opens doors that intellect can't unlock. So keep walking, keep trusting, keep believing, because He said, I will show you, and He will. My friends, there's a moment in your walk with God when the fog doesn't clear, it thickens. There's a moment when all the logic in your head, all the plans in your notebook, all the advice from people who love you, none of it can get you to the next place. Because what God is doing in you, it can't be explained, only obeyed. He doesn't start with understanding. He starts with obedience. Genesis 12:1 says, the Lord had said to Abram, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. Did you catch that? Leave what's yours, your country, your people, your father's house, and go to a place He doesn't name. Just, I will show you. God tells Abram to leave 3 things: his land, his lineage, and his legacy. That's not random, that's personal. Because when God calls you, He doesn't just call your feet, He calls your identity. He's saying, what I'm about to do in you, your past can't hold it, your people can't understand it, and your comfort can't contain it. You've got to leave. Now let me tell you something that might make you uncomfortable. Spiritual movement always requires physical separation. If you're asking God to take you higher, don't be surprised when He asks you to let go of what's been holding you down. You can't carry yesterday's attachments into tomorrow's anointing. You can't step into the I will show you unless you're willing to step out of the what I already know. So we often want God to move in our lives without moving anything in our lives. But God is a God of disruption before He's a God of direction. He disrupts comfort before. He delivers clarity. He unsettles your surroundings before He unveils your assignment. He said to Abram, get out before He ever said go to. That means the letting go comes before the showing up. That's why the hardest part of the call is not believing it, it's obeying it when it makes no sense. It's saying yes when you don't have the destination, just the voice. That's real faith. Real obedience doesn't wait for explanation. Real obedience doesn't need confirmation. Real obedience trusts the character of the caller more than the clarity of the map. God didn't give Abram coordinates. He didn't show him a vision board. He didn't hand him a schedule. He just said, go and I will show. That's backwards to us. We want the showing before the going. We want the vision before the voyage. But God says, no, obedience first, understanding comes later. And maybe that's you today. Maybe God's been stirring something in you, asking you to walk away from what's familiar to turn your back on what's comfortable. And you've been waiting for confirmation, waiting for the map. But God is not going to give you the map. He is the map. And he's saying, if you trust me, I will take you somewhere you never imagined. But first, leave. Because the truth is, the place God is calling you to can't be seen from where you are. You won't get the vision until you start moving. You won't get the details until you let go. The inheritance is ahead, not behind. The anointing is in the unknown, not in the safe. So here's the word for someone today. Stop asking for clarity and start walking in obedience. The blessing isn't in the knowing, it's in the going. Leave what's yours, and he will show you what's his. That's the journey of faith. Not sight, not proof, just a promise, just a voice. And it's enough because the one who calls you is faithful, and his voice is enough to leave everything behind. Beloved, chosen ones, listen to me now. We've been walking through the dark one step at a time. We followed the voice that only says, I will show you. Not what, not where, not how long, just a whisper of I will. And we've trusted that. We've leaned into it, even when nothing made sense. Even when we couldn't see 5 feet in front of us. But now the Lord is bringing us to the pivot point. This is where the journey gets real. When God called Abraham in Genesis 12, he didn't hand him a map. He didn't give him a 5-step plan or a strategy meeting with a timeline and a budget. No, he said something far more powerful and far more unsettling. Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. That was it. That was the instruction. That was the mission. Leave everything you know and everything you think defines you and follow me to what I haven't even revealed yet. That's not just a command. That's a divine exchange. That's a spiritual transaction where God says, you give me what's yours and I will show you what's mine. It's not just a relocation, it's a release. And it's not just about geography. It's about identity, loyalty, memory, and trust. This is not a comfortable word. This is not the type of message that lets you sit back and nod politely. No. This is the kind of word that shakes you from your safe place, from your emotional homeland, from the traditions that held you, from the familiar that cradled you in comfort but stunted your calling. God is saying, let go of what was so I can show you what will be. And here's the truth. Most of us want to walk in God's promises while holding on to our preferences. We want to see the future while still being wrapped in the past. But God makes it clear to Abraham, and he's making it clear to you. You cannot receive the I will show you if you refuse to release the yours. The promise of destiny is always preceded by a moment of surrender. What you're willing to leave behind determines what God can lead you into. The cost of calling is detachment. The cost of forward motion is unhooking from what rooted you. And not all roots are righteous. Some roots are wrapped around fear. Some are buried in old rejection and family expectations, in generational definitions. But God says, break the soil, uproot yourself. I've got something different for you. When God says go, he means for your whole soul to move. Not just your address, not just your Sunday outfit, not just your Instagram bio. All of you, your worldview, your voice, your patterns, your allegiances. There's something that strikes me deeply. You can't hold on to the old and step into the new. That sounds simple, but it's the deepest spiritual surgery you'll ever face. Because the old is seductive. The old feels safe. Even if it's broken, even if it's dysfunctional, at least you understand it. At least you know how to operate within it. Some of us have become professionals at surviving in what's not even meant for us. And when God invites us into the unknown, we hesitate not because we don't believe him, but because we still believe in the safety of the familiar. But hear me, family, safety is not the same as destiny. God didn't call you to be safe. He called you to be sanctified, set apart, walking by faith, not by sight. He didn't call you to manage your past. He called you to walk into a future you've never seen, one that your ancestors couldn't imagine, one that your upbringing couldn't explain. Abraham had to leave his country, his context. He had to leave his people, his community, and he had to leave his father's house, his covering, his comfort, his cultural shaping. Why? Because everything God was going to do in him required a fresh canvas, not a remix, not a renovation, a whole new revelation. Some of you keep asking God to bless something old. You want him to show up in a place he already told you to leave. You're asking him to fund an identity he never formed for you. And he's saying, I cannot show you what's mine until you let go of what's yours. That's the principle. That's the heart of this word. And that's the breaking point for many believers, because this is where it gets real. God says, your name is attached to a place I didn't assign. Your peace is tied to a people I'm asking you to release. Your potential is locked in a home I never built for you. What if the delay you feel right now isn't because God is withholding? What if it's because you're still holding? What if the miracle hasn't manifested because the memory hasn't been surrendered? See, God is not in the business of building on shaky foundations. He tears down what cannot hold the weight of his glory. And that includes our attachments. That includes the relationships we keep out of nostalgia. That includes the customs we cling to because they comfort us. Abraham couldn't bring everything with him. God never said, bring your best from Haran. He said, leave it all. And even when Abraham brought Lot with him, someone God didn't mention, conflict followed. That's another warning. When we carry what God never called us to, we will fight battles we were never built for. Some of the chaos in your journey is not demonic, it's disobedience. There comes a point in every walk with God where the weight of where you've been becomes incompatible with where you're going. And God begins to separate you, to strip you, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Don't mistake God's separation for abandonment. Don't confuse his silence for absence. He's pruning, he's refining, he's emptying your hands so he can fill them with something greater. But you cannot carry Egypt into Canaan. You cannot bring your father's household into a promise that redefines the family tree. This is not just about Abraham. This is about you. This is about your transition. This is about the fork in your road. You can keep clinging to what was, or you can walk into what will be. But you cannot do both. So let me ask you, what are you still carrying? What is God asking you to release? Is it a mindset? Is it a relationship? Is it a job that pays well but robs your peace? Is it a title that strokes your ego but chokes your growth? Is it a version of yourself that helped you survive but can't help you thrive? Whatever it is, the call of God on your life is asking for an exchange, not a negotiation, not a compromise, a full surrender. And here's the blessing in that when God says, I will show you, it means what he has for you is better than what you're leaving behind. He's not taking you out to leave you empty. He's transitioning you into inheritance. But inheritance only comes to those who obey. Faith is not just believing that God can, it's walking when he hasn't yet. It's stepping without a blueprint. It's trusting that even though you don't see the land, the promise still stands. Abraham didn't know the destination. He only knew the direction, but he trusted the one who gave the word. And sometimes that's all you have, a word, but that word is enough to build a life. That word is enough to anchor your soul. That word is enough to burn the bridge to your past and light the path to your purpose. Don't wait for clarity to obey. Don't wait for certainty to move. When God speaks, your only job is to go. This is the hour of divine exchange. God is calling you to trade your homeland for His promise, your security for His sovereignty, your legacy for His glory. And yes, it will cost you. Yes, it will stretch you. But it will also bless you in ways you never imagined. The land God wants to show you cannot be described, it must be discovered. But discovery only comes to those who are willing to depart. You must leave the harbor to see the horizon. And when you do, when you finally let go of your country, your people, your father's household, you will realize that what God wants to show you was always worth the leaving. So today I invite you, no, I challenge you to release what's yours so God can reveal what's His. Stop asking Him to visit your past when He's waiting in your future. The journey starts when you say yes. Not yes to comfort, not yes to familiarity, but yes to the unknown, yes to the unseen, yes to the unimaginable. Because what He will show you is more than a location, it's a transformation. It's the rebirth of everything you thought you knew into everything God has always known you to be. This is your moment of exchange. Let it go and let Him lead. My dear friends, sometimes you follow God, you obey every instruction He gives, you walk in faith, you sacrifice, you worship, and still you look around and say, Lord, I'm here, but I don't see it yet. You see no open doors, no signs, no map, just silence. And it's in that moment that many people want to turn back. They want to abandon the region simply because the details haven't been revealed. But listen to me, don't move too quickly. In Genesis 22, God told Abraham something powerful, something very specific and very vague at the same time. God said, go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Did you catch that? He didn't say go to Mount Moriah. He said go to the region. The region, that means the general area. That means start walking. I'll give you specifics later. And that's where some of you are right now. You're not lost. You're not wrong. You're just not at the mountain yet. You are in the region. See, when Abraham set out with Isaac, he was following a word from God that was incomplete. It had a direction, but not a destination. And that takes a different kind of faith. It takes a mature faith to stay put in the region when God hasn't shown you the exact mountain yet. But watch this. Abraham didn't stop walking just because he didn't see the whole picture. He walked for 3 days. Henduret. He kept pressing. He stayed in the region because he trusted that clarity would come when he got close enough. And that's what I came to tell you today. When you are in the right region but still waiting on the details, don't panic. Don't leave the region just because the mountain hasn't been named. Some of you have been praying, God, where is it? Where is the breakthrough? Where is the answer? Where is the opportunity? And God is saying you're close. You're closer than you think. Just don't walk away now. Because here's the truth. When you get close to destiny, warfare intensifies. The attacks ramp up. Confusion increases. Resistance rises. Why? Because you are near the mountain. You are near the place of revelation. You are near the promise being fulfilled. But the enemy wants you to quit before you get there. The enemy doesn't attack what's far from destiny. He attacks what's near to it. That's why Abraham didn't see opposition when he was still at home. The opposition didn't show up when he left early in the morning. The test came when he was on the mountain with his son tied up and no lamb in sight. That's when it got real. That's when the voices started saying, you heard wrong. God wouldn't ask for this. This is crazy. And that's the space many of you are living in right now. The space between the region and the revelation. Let me ask you something. What if God has already brought you to the right place, but he's still forming the right time? What if the job isn't the issue, the city isn't the issue, the relationship isn't the issue? You're just early, you're in the region, but the mountain hasn't been named yet. This is not the time to move. This is the time to wait, to worship, to listen, because when you are in the right region, staying put is obedience. God didn't tell Abraham to figure it all out. He told him to go and wait for instruction. Some of us want the GPS when God only promised direction. But understand this, revelation always follows obedience. Abraham lifted his eyes and saw the mountain on the third day. He didn't see it before because he wasn't close enough. You can't see it from the starting line. You've got to walk by faith until vision catches up with obedience. And let's talk about the discomfort of being close, because close doesn't always feel good. Close means you're not there, but you can smell it. You're not holding the promise, but it's in reach. Close is what makes you want to give up because you've come too far to turn back, but it hurts too much to keep going. And yet, that's where destiny is made. That's where the promise separates from potential. Anybody can obey when it's clear, but it takes real faith to obey when it's cloudy. That's the kind of faith Abraham had, and that's the kind of faith God honors. You may not have the full plan, but if you have the word, you have enough. Now listen closely. When Abraham finally got to the right mountain, God showed him what he had hidden. It wasn't until Abraham put Isaac on the altar that he saw the ram in the bush. God didn't reveal the ram before obedience. God didn't shout from heaven, "Don't worry, Abraham, I've got a backup plan." No, God watched to see, would Abraham trust him when it looked like lost? That's the moment of decision. That's the test of the region. Some of you are in that test right now. You are where God sent you, but you're still waiting on clarity. You're in the job, but the purpose hasn't unfolded. You're in the marriage, but the fruit hasn't blossomed. You're in the ministry, but the harvest hasn't come. That doesn't mean you missed it. It means you're in the region. Stay there. Stand firm. Don't back down. Because the closer you are to the mountain, the louder the lies get. The enemy will scream, "You missed it. You messed up. Go back." But God is whispering, "You're closer than ever. Keep walking. Keep trusting. Keep building. I will show you." And let me tell you something, the same way God pointed out the mountain to Abraham, he will point out the next step to you. But you've got to stay in position. Clarity is coming. Provision is coming. The mountain is already there. The ram is already caught in the thicket. The breakthrough is already moving your way. But you'll miss it if you leave the region. So what do you do while you wait? You worship. You trust. You move forward with what you know. Don't try to make something happen. Don't force a door to open. Stay in the region. Keep your eyes open. Lift your eyes like Abraham did, because you might just be one act of obedience away from seeing the ram God already prepared. You don't need the whole picture right now. You just need to be faithful in the region, because God doesn't bless location. He blesses obedience. And if you're where he told you to be, even without the details, you're in the right place. Stay in the region, because on that mountain, God will provide. Beloved chosen ones, you prayed for it. You believed for it. You cried out to God for it. And now it's here, but you don't recognize it because it doesn't look the way you thought it would. It doesn't sound like your expectation. It doesn't fit into the box you built in your mind. That's where we find ourselves right there in Exodus 16. The Israelites had just been delivered from Egypt, rescued by the mighty hand of God, led through the Red Sea, watched Pharaoh's army drown behind them. And now, only a few days later, hunger hits. And in that moment, God answers them, but his answer looks different. He sends bread from heaven, divine provision straight from the sky. But instead of falling to their knees in worship, instead of shouting hallelujah, they look at the blessing and ask, what is it? They called it manna. And manna literally means, what is it? That's where we begin today, because some of you are walking right in the middle of what you prayed for, but you're missing it. You're standing in the promise and calling it a problem. You're looking at the miracle and questioning its form. Because we all have a tendency to expect God's blessings to arrive dressed like royalty, wrapped in something grand, easy to identify. But God rarely delivers on our terms. He's not a vending machine. He's not obligated to match your idea of how the breakthrough should appear. And when we expect him to move one way and he moves another, it can leave us confused, frustrated, even ungrateful. Let me tell you this, many people reject the supernatural because it comes through something natural. They reject the holy because it's wrapped in something human. And that's what happened in the wilderness. God sent the answer, but it wasn't familiar. It didn't match the expectation of their Egyptian past. In Egypt, food came through oppression, yes, but it came predictably. In freedom, it came from heaven, but it came mysteriously. And that mystery became their stumbling block. They looked at the provision of God and said, "We don't know what this is." How many times has God brought provision into your life, but because it was wrapped in discipline, you didn't receive it? How many times did he send the right relationship, but because they didn't match your preferences, you overlooked them? How? Many times. Did he bring you an open door, but because it was disguised as hard work, you walked past it? What you call, what is this may actually be, this is it. You just didn't recognize it because your old mindset blocked your new revelation. See, you can't bring an Egyptian mindset into a wilderness process and expect to understand what God is doing. You'll mislabel the blessing. You'll grumble instead of give thanks. You'll ask for signs while ignoring substance. And that's exactly what happened. The Israelites didn't reject God. They just didn't know how to interpret him in a new season. They were so used to the rhythm of survival in slavery that freedom felt foreign. So when the food came, they said, "We don't get it." And many of us are the same way. We don't get it when the answer comes in the form of grief. We don't get it when healing comes through brokenness. We don't get it when elevation comes through obscurity. God's answers are not always aesthetically pleasing. Sometimes they come in packages we weren't ready to open. Sometimes they look like wilderness instead of wonder. Sometimes they look like routine instead of revelation. And yet if you look deeper, if you look with eyes of faith, you'll see that hidden in the what is it is the very thing your soul has been crying out for. It's nourishment. It's preparation. It's God saying, "You asked for me, here I am." And here's the thing, manna didn't just come once. It came every day. But they had to gather it. They had to go out each morning and pick it up. That means God gave the provision, but he didn't force feed them. There's a partnership in the process. God provides, you respond. God releases, you receive. But if you keep saying, "What is this?" and refuse to move, you'll go hungry in the presence of provision. And I don't know about you, but I refuse to go hungry when heaven is raining down. So what does that mean for us today? It means the answer might be here already. It just doesn't look the way you imagined. Maybe the career you've been waiting for is hidden in the internship you're overlooking. Maybe the healing you've been begging for is beginning through the habit you're resisting. Maybe the next level is disguised as a lower platform. Maybe your miracle is covered in monotony, but don't miss it. Don't stand in the fulfillment and long for the fantasy. Don't hold on to an old version of how God works while he's trying to show you something new. This is what Jesus meant when he said, "He who has ears to hear, let him hear." Because the Spirit can be speaking, but your filters will block the frequency. You'll call it coincidence. You'll call it confusion. You'll call it insignificant. But heaven's calling it breakthrough. Heaven's calling it strategy. Heaven's calling it grace. And if you can stretch your faith to accept the unfamiliar, you'll taste and see that the Lord is good even when his goodness comes in unexpected form. You see, manna didn't look like bread. They knew. It didn't taste like food they'd had before, but it sustained them for 40 years. Don't dismiss the thing that's meant to sustain you just because it doesn't sparkle. Don't ignore the person who speaks truth just because they don't flatter. Don't run from the job that builds character just because it doesn't build your ego. Sometimes God wraps glory in grit. Sometimes he hides gold in the ground. Sometimes he buries greatness in the small stuff. And it's the ones who can say, I don't understand it, but I trust it, who will walk in victory. Because here's the truth, revelation doesn't always come before responsibility. Sometimes you walk with what you don't understand until it reveals its purpose. You gather manna not because you get it, but because you trust the one who sent it. You don't have to name it correctly, you just have to receive it faithfully. God doesn't need your definition. He needs your participation. And let's go deeper for a second. The same pattern repeats all throughout Scripture. Naaman almost missed his healing because the instructions seemed too simple. The widow in Zarephath almost said no to the prophet because her supplies seemed too small. The disciples almost missed the risen Jesus on the road to Emmaus because he appeared in a form they didn't expect. God is consistent, but not always predictable. And the sooner you accept that, the quicker you'll move from confusion to clarity. So if you're in a season where nothing looks like what you prayed for, hold steady. God might be answering in disguise. He might be feeding you in a new way. And instead of asking, what is it, try saying, Lord, show me what you're doing. That one shift from complaint to curiosity, from confusion to communion, will change your life. You'll start seeing provision where you once saw problems. You'll start recognizing grace in the midst of grind. You'll begin to understand that heaven's methods don't always match earth's expectations, but they always meet heaven's purpose. And that's the invitation today. Stop waiting for God to fit your mold. Start letting him stretch your faith. Stop rejecting manna just because it looks strange. Start receiving it because it's from him. Because every time you say yes to something unfamiliar, you make room for something eternal. And every time you gather the manna, even while asking, what is it you're declaring? I trust you, Lord, even when I don't understand you. This is not the season to miss your miracle. Because of your mindset, this is not the time to walk away from what you asked for because it came wrapped in something you didn't prefer. This is the moment to lean in, to humble yourself, to say, God, I'm ready to receive it however you send it, because he's still sending, he's still faithful. He's still the God who provides, and sometimes his provision shows up looking nothing like what you imagined, but exactly like what you need. Chosen ones, let me ask you one more time. You've been praying, haven't you? You've been fasting, crying, pleading with God for a breakthrough, for a solution for that door to open. You've asked for bread, real bread, sustenance, a full answer, a miracle wrapped in perfection. But what you got felt incomplete. It felt unfinished. And now you're staring at it confused, frustrated, maybe even disappointed. You're thinking, God, this isn't what I asked for. This doesn't look like provision. This doesn't feel like an answer. But the truth is, what you received was the answer. It just wasn't baked yet. It was the raw material, not the finished product. Let's go back to Exodus 16. The people of Israel are wandering in the wilderness and they are hungry. Their stomachs are empty and their hearts are filled with doubt. They begin to complain. Moses, did you bring us out here to die? We had bread when we were in Egypt. And in his mercy, God responds. He sends them provision straight from heaven. But listen carefully, what he sends isn't loaves of bread falling hot and fresh from the sky. No, what they receive is something different. They get manna. And do you know what manna means? It literally means, what is it? That's what they called it. What is this? Because it didn't look like provision. It didn't look like the answer they were expecting. See, that's the moment where so many of us end up missing what God is actually doing in our lives, because we've already built a picture in our minds of exactly what the answer should look like. And when it shows up in a different form, when it doesn't match our expectations, we discount it. We brush it off. We overlook it. But God never promised you a finished loaf. He promised daily bread. And here's the truth. Daily bread often begins as raw, unfinished ingredients. You asked for increase, and what God gave you was a new responsibility, something that looked more like pressure than promotion. You asked for advancement, and He gave you a challenge, something to stretch you. You prayed for love, and He brought someone into your life, but they were still healing, still growing. You asked for healing, and instead of instant relief, you received steps, a process, instructions, a new way of eating, a new way of thinking, and now you feel like tossing it aside. But hear me clearly. Don't reject the provision just because it didn't arrive in its finished, polished form. Manna wasn't a finished product. It wasn't bread already made. It was potential waiting to be used. It had to be collected from the ground each morning. It had to be gathered with intention. Then it had to be prepared. Ground, cooked, baked, or boiled. God gave them raw materials on purpose because He was teaching them how to steward what He provides, how to partner with provision, and how to trust Him day by day. Too many people today are starving spiritually, not because God didn't answer their prayers, but because they were expecting cake and God gave them flour. They were hoping for a finished miracle, something oven hot and ready to serve, and instead God placed ingredients in their hands. He said, "Here now, show me what you'll do with it." That's where maturity is tested. That's where faith is revealed. Can you recognize the value of a blessing that still requires your participation? There's a generation today that longs for God to move powerfully, yet they're not willing to knead the dough, not willing to rise early and gather, not willing to put in the labor to sweat a little, to embrace discipline, to believe that the process itself is sacred. But hear this, when God gives you manna, He's declaring, "I trust you with the process." He's saying, you're ready to carry this miracle to completion. But if you treat manna carelessly, you'll end up missing the miracle that was meant for you. And don't overlook the beauty in this. Each morning manna came down. Every single day, God provided fresh provision, not weekly, not monthly, daily. He was teaching them and us to depend on Him constantly, not on stockpiles, not on yesterday's bread, not on what worked in the past. God was saying, "I'm doing something new every day." But here's the catch. If you slept in, you missed it. If you didn't gather it in time, it vanished. That alone preaches many of us are missing heaven-sent provision simply because we're spiritually oversleeping. We're not alert, not discerning the daily opportunities God is placing right before us. Sometimes we get so caught up chasing comfort, convenience, and ready-made miracles that we end up despising the manna. We reject the very thing God sent to sustain and grow us. We complain, "This isn't what I asked for," not realizing God gave us exactly what we needed. But it comes with a requirement, faith that moves effort, that obeys, and hearts willing to prepare. Let's make this personal. Maybe you prayed for your dream job, but what showed up was a disorganized, unpaid internship. Maybe you asked God to heal your marriage and instead He asked you to take the first step through forgiveness. You wanted Him to fix your children, but He told you to change the way you speak to them. You asked for a thriving ministry and what He gave you was a handful of inconsistent people who barely listen. But maybe that's the manna. Maybe it doesn't look like the breakthrough you had in mind, but it's the seed of something greater. And if you're willing to work it, to obey Him, to value what seems small and insignificant, God will breathe on it, and He will bring the increase in His time. Here's a powerful truth. Many miracles come disguised as raw materials. What you prayed for might show up looking like a burden, not a blessing. It might require more effort, not ease. But you can't complain about what you refuse to steward. You can't say God didn't respond if you never worked with what He gave, if you never took the time to bake the provision He placed in your hands. The Israelites grew weary of the manna. They began to despise it, crying out, "We want meat. We're tired of this." But in doing so, they were rejecting heaven's very best. They forgot the cost. They forgot the faithful God who provided for them every single morning. Don't let your personal preferences blind you to God's provision. Don't let your desire for something more exciting cause you to overlook the miracle in the simple. Sometimes the supernatural is hidden in the ordinary and we miss it because we're craving something dramatic. You desire elevation. Then you must embrace preparation. You're asking for favor. Then treat what God has already placed in your hand as sacred. God is watching how you respond to the manna, how you handle the in-between season. Will you be faithful? Will you gather what He gives? Will you prepare it with care? Or will you grumble that it didn't come ready-made and complete? If we're being real, the issue isn't that God didn't show up, it's that His way of showing up didn't match our expectations. We wanted answers wrapped in style, in loud miracles, in bold and visible displays. And yes, sometimes He does that. But more often He responds in quiet ways, in small instructions, in seeds, in manna. Not in loaves or toast or anything flashy, just manna. And it takes spiritual maturity to say, I'll do the work. I'll bake it. I'll trust Him anyway. Let me tell you this. Maturity means you stop waiting around for something flawless and begin working with what God already placed in your hands. It's when you stop asking, why isn't it finished yet? And begin asking, how can I use what I have right now? Maturity means you praise God even for boulders because you recognize He's giving you materials to build something sacred. True maturity sees the process itself as a vital part of the fulfillment of God's promise. On the other side of your discipline lies your destiny. Inside your obedience is hidden purpose. Even in the broken pieces, there's a blessing if you pick them up and work with them. Don't sit around waiting for everything to be perfect. Use what God has already placed in your hands. Don't reject the manna just because it's messy or slow. God gave you potential, not the finished product. The question is, will you embrace it and do something with it? I came to tell someone today, your miracle is already here. It just didn't arrive with a shiny ribbon or flashing lights. It came as a sack of flour and a jug of water. It came as a quiet word, a gentle nudge, an unexpected open door. It may not look like what you imagined, but it's still the answer. Don't overlook it. Don't ignore it. Don't walk right past your breakthrough just because it asks something of you. That's not God forgetting you. That's God trusting you with something sacred. So gather your manna, light the fire, knead the dough, prepare the table, because God gave you what you needed. It's in your hands now. Bake it, work it, bless it, steward it, and you will taste and see that the Lord is good every single day. Beloved chosen ones, I need you to grasp this powerful truth. God doesn't drop finished miracles into your lap. He invites you into partnership. He gives you the raw materials, the divine word, the open door, and then He looks to see what you'll do with it. That's where we left off with. The miracle already delivered, but hidden in plain sight. No bow, no fanfare, just a bag of flour and a pitcher of water. And now we step into the next revelation collaboration, because when God brings His part, you still have to bring yours. When heaven responds, earth must move. When God speaks, you pick up the tools. When God gives vision, you start the work. It's never just Him acting, it's always both. There's a moment in Scripture where God calls Moses up the mountain and says, carve out the stone and I will write the words. God didn't hand over a finished tablet. He didn't say, sit back and I'll take care of everything. He said, you carve, I'll write. That's the rhythm of how heaven works. It's collaboration. It's a holy partnership. God sends the fire, but you still have to bring the wood. God unlocks the door, but He won't drag you through it. You have to walk with your own 2 feet. And yet so often we've been praying for God to do it all. Lord, fix it. Lord, change it. Lord, rescue me. And He's saying, I will but bring me the stone. Breakthrough doesn't come to the still. It comes to those who move. Blessings don't build themselves. You have to pick up the hammer. Prayer is power, but it was never meant to take the place of preparation. Faith is essential, but faith without follow-through is just fantasy. You say you believe, but belief is proven in steps. If God says, go build, are you willing to cut the wood? If he says, I've put influence on your life, will you carry yourself with integrity when nobody's clapping? If he says you're called to lead, will you serve in silence first? This isn't about waiting for the stars to align. It's about starting with what you've got. If God gave you a vision, what are you doing with it? If he gave you peace, are you planting it into your conversations, into your home? If he gave you manna, something fresh, raw, divine, are you preparing it with faith, or are you standing there complaining because it doesn't look like the cake you imagined? This is where many believers stall, not because God failed to move, but because they refused to move with him. They wanted God to carve the stone and write the words, but God says, that's not how this works. I'll write, but you carve. What does that mean? It means that miracles demand motion. That obedience is the bridge between the promise and the provision. That when heaven gives you the green light, you don't stay parked in prayer, you step on the gas and drive forward. Because sometimes the answer to your prayer is not more confirmation, it's more courage. God is waiting on you to act like what you heard is true. And let's be honest, it takes maturity to partner with God. It's easier to pray and wait than it is to pray and build. But growth demands action. Blessing demands stewardship. Maturity looks like moving before the miracle is visible. Maturity looks like gathering manna and preparing it every day, even when it's not what you were craving. Because the truth is, God is watching how you handle what's in your hands before he trusts you with more. He's not just measuring your worship, he's measuring your work ethic. He's watching how you treat the in-between seasons, the mundane assignments, the quiet instructions. Because if you can't manage manna, you won't multiply with meat. If you can't honor what seems ordinary, you won't receive what's extraordinary. This is what collaboration looks like. It's not glamorous, but it's glorious. It's sacred, even when it's silent. It's heaven saying, I'll rain down provision, and earth replying, I'll gather it daily. It's God saying, here's a promise, and you saying, I'll make room for it. It's not always loud. It's not always easy. Sometimes it looks like tears on a workbench and prayer in a field. Sometimes it means showing up to rehearse when no one claps. Sometimes it means building something no one sees yet. But when you do your part, God always does his. He never leaves you hanging. He never makes a promise. He won't fill, but he's asking, will you bring me the stone? And if we go back to Moses, that moment on the mountain wasn't just about tablets, it was about trust. God was saying, I trust you enough to carve the shape of what I will fill. And Moses obeyed. He climbed, he carved, and then God showed up and wrote his law on the very stone Moses had shaped. What if God is waiting to write on what you bring him? What if he's not silent? He's just waiting for your portion to be prepared. What if the delay isn't denial? It's divine collaboration waiting for your participation. Don't sit down on what you were called to build. Don't let the weight of process make you forget the power of promise. Don't use waiting as an excuse to stop working. Because prayer moves heaven, but preparation makes you ready for what heaven sends. And God does not waste his words. If he spoke it, he meant it. If he declared it, he will do it. But you have to step into alignment. You have to respond, because nothing multiplies in your life without movement. So maybe the question is no longer, God, when will you move? But instead, God, show me what you've already given. Show me the stone. Show me the tools. Show me the opportunity. Because I don't want to be the reason heaven's agenda gets delayed. I don't want to miss the fullness of what God has for me because I waited for him to do all of it. No, I want to carve. I want to build. I want to bake the manna. I want to show God that what he gave me I took seriously, that I treated it like it was sacred even when it looked ordinary, that I responded with action, not apathy, that I showed up with preparation, not just prayer. That's what collaboration looks like. That's what maturity sounds like. That's the rhythm of heaven meeting earth. And that's the call on your life right now. Carve the stone. Show God you're ready. And when you bring your part, he will bring his every single time. Beloved chosen ones, I know you've prayed, you've prepared, and you've gathered your manna. You've wrestled with the silence of God, trusted him through the whispers, and worked the raw ingredients. But now comes a different kind of moment. This is not the time to wait. This is not the time to sit back and hope it falls in your lap. This is a different season. This is the season where the things God promised are within reach, but they won't land gently in your hands. You've got to stretch. You've got to snatch. You've got to move like you believe what he said. Because heaven has released it, but now earth has to seize it. There are moments in life when what you ask God for doesn't fall down like rain, it hovers just above your head, just close enough to touch, just near enough to recognize, just visible enough to stir your faith. But you won't get it without effort. You won't see it fulfilled without action. This is the season where proximity demands pursuit. The miracle is not out of reach, but it is out of comfort. God brought it close, but he didn't put it in your pocket. He's testing your hunger. He's measuring your reach. He's asking, will you stretch or will you settle? So many people miss what God is doing because they expect it to come packaged in ease. But that's not how this works. This is not the season of soft landings. This is the season of decisive movements. The door is cracked open, but you've got to walk through it. The opportunity is forming, but you've got to apply for it. The answer is released, but you've got to respond to it. This is not the season to sit and see. This is the season to stretch and seize. God told Joshua, every place you set your foot, I will give you. But notice, it didn't say every place you look at. It said every place you step on. That means if you don't move, you don't receive. If you don't stretch, you don't possess. There's something about movement that activates manifestation. There's something about pursuit that unlocks provision. This isn't about striving, it's about stepping. It's not about force, it's about faith that moves your feet. And let me tell you something, you won't feel ready. You won't always feel qualified. But readiness is not the prerequisite for action. Obedience is, courage is, trust is. Faith doesn't wait for ideal conditions. Faith moves in the middle of uncertainty. Faith says, I don't have all the answers, but I won't let this moment pass me by. Some of you have been circling the same promise for years, praying and hoping and waiting. But now, God is saying, it's in reach, but I won't push it into your hand. I want to see you move. Because the stretching is part of the shaping. The reaching is part of the refining. When you stretch, you expose what's been stiff. You awaken what's been dormant. You stir up what's been sitting still too long. That's why this season feels uncomfortable. That's why it feels like tension and pressure and urgency all at once. Because heaven is calling you to stretch further than you've stretched before. This is not punishment, it's preparation. This is not resistance, it's readiness. The promise hasn't moved, it's waiting on your motion. Think about the woman with the issue of blood. She didn't sit back and wait for healing. She didn't hope Jesus would notice her in the crowd. No, she stretched. She pushed through. She reached out and snatched her healing from the hem of his garment. That wasn't passive faith, that was desperate, determined faith. That was a woman who said, this might be messy, this might be painful, but I won't miss what's mine. That's the kind of spirit this season requires. Not polite, not passive, persistent, pressing, pursuing. Some of you have been standing too still for too long. You've been waiting for perfect clarity, perfect timing, perfect confirmation. But faith is not always clean. Sometimes faith is sweaty. Sometimes faith has to elbow its way through the crowd. Sometimes faith limps and strains and cries while it moves. But it still moves, and God honors movement. He meets you in the stretch. He breathes on what you dare to reach for. He backs the one who moves, even while trembling. I came to tell somebody today, God has already done his part. He brought the answer close. He whispered the instruction. He stirred the opportunity. Now he's watching. Will you move? Will you reach? Will you stretch past fear? Will you snatch it? Even if you don't feel ready, because this is not a season of delay, it's a season of decision. The only thing standing between you and the next level is your willingness to stretch and snatch. This might be uncomfortable. This might pull you into places you've never been before. But growth is always on the other side of discomfort. Destiny is always just beyond familiarity. And faith, real faith, it lives in the stretch. So reach, snatch, move like you, believe it's yours. Walk like the door's already open. Talk like the promise is already yours. Praise like the breakthrough already happened. Because this is the stretch and snatch season, and what's within reach is waiting for your hand. My dear friends, you've been waiting for God to answer. You've been on your knees crying out, God, I need direction. I need provision. I need something to show me. You're still with me. And maybe, just maybe, you're standing in the middle of your answer, but it doesn't look like what you expected. It doesn't come dressed in gold. It doesn't shine. It's not majestic or loud or instantly recognizable. It looks strange. It looks incomplete. It looks like something that makes you scratch your head and say, what is this? That's where we're going right now. Because if you're not careful, you will walk right past the very thing God sent to feed you, to sustain you, to carry you into your next season. See, in the wilderness, the children of Israel cried out for food, and God gave it to them. But it didn't show up as bread loaves. It didn't show up pre-sliced with butter on top. It showed up as white flakes on the ground, small and unfamiliar. The Bible says when they saw it, they said, Manna, which literally means, what is this? And that's what many of us do. God sends provision, but because it's not in the form, we recognize, we dismiss it. We doubt it. We walk past it and say, that's not what I asked for. But I came to tell you, just because the blessing doesn't come in the package you expected, doesn't mean it isn't from God. You prayed for promotion, it came as extra responsibility. You asked for growth, it came as stretching pain. You begged for purpose, it came wrapped in disappointment that forced you to reevaluate your path. You said, God, make me a leader, and He sent people who challenge you, who test your patience, who require more love than you think you have. That's manna. That's God's provision. It may not look like much, but if you take it seriously, if you take it home, prepare it, work it, honor it, it will nourish you like nothing else can. Let me go deeper. The mistake we often make is thinking God's answer should relieve all tension. We think it should solve all the problems. But God doesn't usually hand out finished products. He hands out raw material. He says, here's a bag of flour and a jug of oil. Now go make something with it. He says, here's an idea, not a blueprint. Here's an opportunity, not a guarantee. Here's a door, not a limousine ride through it. And what you do next, that's the test. That's the stretch. That's the moment where you either say, what is this, and walk away, or you say, Lord, I trust you, and you pick it up and get to work. See, manna wasn't meant to be admired. It wasn't meant to be stored up in a museum. It wasn't meant to be analyzed until you talk yourself out of it. It was meant to be gathered daily, prepared, and eaten. It was nourishment for the journey, but it required human partnership. And today I believe God is asking you, Will you recognize what I gave you, even if it doesn't look like what you thought you needed? You keep praying. God, send me a sign, and he already has. But it didn't come with a trumpet. It came as a whisper. It came as a conversation that sparked something in your spirit. It came as an open door you almost walked right past because it looked too small, too humble, too different from what you imagined. But hear me, it's still God. And if you prepare it, if you work with it, if you stop judging the miracle based on its wrapper, it will feed your soul. I feel this strong today. Somebody's miracle is sitting on the ground waiting to be gathered, but you keep stepping over it because you're looking for fire from the sky. You're looking for angels singing. You're waiting for the light to turn green, the sky to open the voice to thunder from heaven. But what if the answer's already here and it's quiet? What if it's humble? What if it's raw? Will you still honor it? Don't let your expectation blind you to your blessing. Don't let your pride make you miss your provision. Don't let your intellect talk you out of your inheritance. Manna is not impressive. It doesn't post well on Instagram. It doesn't come with applause, but it sustains you. It gives you the strength to keep walking, to keep moving, to keep believing. And I wonder how many of us have walked right past what we prayed for because it looked too ordinary. See, the danger isn't that God won't provide. The danger is that we won't recognize the provision. And what we fail to recognize, we won't receive. And what we won't receive, we can't be nourished by. And what we aren't nourished by, we can't grow from. So this isn't just about noticing something new, it's about shifting your mindset. It's about humbling your expectations and saying, God, if this is you, I'll take it. I'll prepare it. I'll thank you for it. Even if it looks strange, even if it doesn't make sense. Now let's get personal. What in your life are you overlooking right now? What has God placed right in front of you that you've been calling nothing when it's actually everything? What opportunity have you minimized because it didn't come packaged in luxury? What relationship have you dismissed because it wasn't instant chemistry? What gift have you neglected because it wasn't glamorous? Let me challenge you, go back and look again. Revisit the conversation, reread the email, reconsider the door that cracked open. Maybe, just maybe, there's manna lying on the ground and it's waiting for you to say yes. Because this is what I know, God doesn't waste provision and he doesn't send miracles to be ignored. But he does require us to see with spiritual eyes. He does call us to walk by faith, not by sight. And he does trust us enough to hide the answer in a question, to bury the breakthrough in something we might be tempted to step over. So here's the warning, and I need you to hear it. Don't you dare walk past the manna again and call it, what is it? Don't you dare treat your answer like it's confusion. Don't you dare dismiss the thing God sent because it doesn't fit your comfort zone. God has already answered. He just disguised it. Will you recognize it? Will you respect it? Will you respond to it? Because the blessing is not just in the provision, it's in the preparation. It's in the faith to say, even if I don't understand it, I will honor it. Even if it's small, I will pick it up. Even if it's unfamiliar, I will prepare it. That's where the miracle multiplies. That's where you're sustained. That's how you move forward, not just by receiving the answer, but by recognizing it. So one more time, let me say it plain. Don't walk past the manna and call it, what is it? Don't miss your moment. Don't miss your miracle. And don't miss your God just because he didn't show up the way you expected. Finally, thank you for staying with me through to the end of today's message. If this word has inspired you or blessed your spirit in any way, we humbly invite you to support this channel with a word of thanks, a prayer, or any gift placed on your heart. Your support helps us continue sharing God's truth and spreading his love to those who need it most, even those who may not have the words to ask. Your prayers, your likes, and your shares are blessings to us in ways we simply cannot describe. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need a word of encouragement and divine wisdom. Your presence helps this community grow and allows us to reach more lives with the light of Christ. May God surround you with His grace, strengthen your walk, and bless everything you put your hands to.